You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm here today with Sidekick Doug from The Rational Capitalist. Hey, Doug.
Oh.
And we have a special guest today, a friend of mine who has written extensively on immigration, and he's also an Ivy League PhD in, what was it, puppetry?
I think it was puppetry. Yeah, something.
No, it's astrophysics. His article is about objectivism and immigration policy of self-interest for America today. Google that and you will get a nice 20-page read. Thanks for joining us for our discussion today, Ed.
Thank you, Sunny. I hear that you have circumnavigated your namesake one more time as of today, and I want to congratulate you.
Thank you. Yes, I wasn't going to say that because I'm not going to brag. It's my birthday today. But I did wake up with 80 Facebook happy birthdays.
That's awesome. You're 29, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Hey, if Ed is an expert on immigration and he's an astrophysicist, is he an expert on illegal aliens?
Exactly.
Oh. All right.
I've been waiting to make that joke for like 2 minutes.
We're going to fact check Trump's border security speech today on the show, and we're going to discuss what he could have done differently because we're all smarter than him. And we're going to discuss the Democrats' creepy response. And if we have time, we're going to get to Democratic socialist Ocasio-Cortez and her comment, some of her comments on the 60 Minutes interview, pushing her dystopian fantasies. But first, jokes. Ed, do you want to start with your joke?
Yeah, why are podcast guests like diapers?
Why?
Well, because they're usually full of shit, but luckily they're disposable.
Let's say they are disposable. They come and go.
Exactly.
But you're not full of shit, right, Ed? Not with that PhD in astrophysics.
Oh, you're going to push that thing, are you?
We're just going to keep talking about it.
I'll tell you.
You're the most credible person we've ever talked to.
We've never talked to someone so credible. Okay, here's a joke from the voicemail.
What's a Jewish dilemma? Free pork.
Do you get that?
What did he say? I didn't hear it.
Free pork.
What's a Jewish dilemma? Free pork. I get it. I get it. That's great.
Brilliant. I love it.
All right. Here's another one. Here's from the joke man.
Sonny, joke for you. Guy steps out of the shower, thinking to himself, it's just too hot to wear clothes today. So he yells to his wife, honey, what do you think the neighbors will think if I went out and mowed the lawn wearing my swim trunks? She replies, probably that I married you for your money.
That's right. Well, and it's probably true. Did you get that one, guys? No laughter from the men in the room.
No, not funny at all.
All right.
Hey, I made up a joke today.
Okay.
I literally made this up like an hour ago.
All right, let's hear it.
What did the guy say to his wife after cheating on her with Sister Mary?
With her sister Mary?
No, with Sister Mary.
Okay, what?
You're second to none.
Oh, that's awful. All right. You have another one?
Sorry about that.
It's a good dad joke.
That is a good dad joke. All right, if you want to tell us a joke for next week, call the number 707-681-5834, and we'll play it because we play them all. Let's start with fact-checking Trump's speech. We all watched it last night. I'm assuming everybody here watched it because it was only 8 minutes, right? I mean, everybody's got 8 minutes to spare for the president, right? It was nice and short.
Yeah, isn't this his first Oval Office address?
Yeah.
Because most presidents do that every few months or something when they're trying to sell us some bullshit. This was pretty cool.
He needs to do more of that, and we'll get into like what he could have done differently. But one thing I'll say right away is that I wish he'd been more off the cuff. I mean, I know it had to be scripted, but I do like it when he talks more from his heart, I guess, or from, his gut. Although he tends to babble and stray from the main points, so maybe it's
I was
better.
wondering if he was going to do that, if he was going to be extemporaneous and be like, you know what I'm saying?
Yo.
You know what I mean?
I wanted him to be 90% president, 10% Trump, and he kind of was 100% president.
He was 100%
so I was a little
president.
disappointed.
Yeah, it was too much. Okay, well, let's get into the fact check. So the first fact that we're going to check is, among those hardest hit, this is a quote, among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. This is hardest hit by illegal immigration. And I was saying that, yes, this is true because Mexican cartels have taken over 100% of the drug trade. And now the only way for blacks to get out of the hood is to rap or get an education and work hard and be a good person. So it's limited their market a little bit. It's limited their opportunities, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Are the Mexican cartels? They're like the wholesalers. I don't know if they're affecting the actual trade on the street.
Well, but there used to be black kingpins, drug kingpins, and I think they're all gone now. It's all Mexican cartel kingpins. Yeah. Isn't that correct, Ed?
Yeah, according to Daniel Horowitz, who follows these things, the Mexican gangs are getting into the retail market as well as the wholesale market. So it's
there's so many Mexicans here now. Why not? Why do they need anybody except their own to do the selling?
Yeah, these are bad guys, transnational gangs. They're more affiliates than ISIS and more countries.
And just as brutal,
just as brutal.
The head choppings and anyway. I would say that one of the hardest things for them is not even, for blacks and Hispanics, the decent blacks and Hispanics, is these lowlifes in their neighborhoods. I mean, that's got to be really hard. Forget the fact that their jobs are, they're not making as much money, but they're living amongst criminals, like really hardcore barbaric criminals.
Right? I almost think that legalizing pot would be worse for these guys.
Why is that?
Because you're taking away the illegal drug trade, which is a source of huge profits. So,
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. The Mexicans have taken away the illegal drug trade. They've taken it from the blacks.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I don't know. Yeah, that's probably true. But
there used to be two ways that they could make their fortune. Three ways: sports, rapping, and drugs. But of course, the drugs means you're going to have a short life and so on. But those were the three ways you could make a lot of money quickly and get out of the hood.
But why is there this focus on Hispanics and African Americans pandering to these identity groups? I mean, I think illegal immigration, it would seem to affect. I mean, there's more white people in this country, and so on an absolute basis, you would think that these people displacing workers would affect everybody, not just these identity groups, of course.
It's the old Washington Post joke, right? World to end tomorrow, women and minorities hardest hit.
That's a good joke.
But it's also some of the biggest political groups in favor of open borders are the Hispanic activist groups and the black activist groups. And
no, really? Are the black activist groups really for open borders?
Yeah, it's especially weird because it really does hurt low income or low skilled job seekers.
I actually have some census data on that. This is going to blow your minds. According to census data, immigrants admitted in the past 2 decades lacking a high school diploma. So these are actually legal immigrants admitted with no high school diploma. They've increased the size of the low-skilled workforce by 25%.
Wow.
That is huge, and that doesn't include illegals. That's legals. And then you've got 22 million illegals in this country. So I wonder what the real percentage is. And then they actually have this figure. As a result, the earnings of this particularly vulnerable group, and this is just including legal immigrants, would have dropped between $800 and $1,500 each year. So I mean, I think if you include illegals, you can increase that number. That's a lot of money. So
yeah, and the worst part of it is that now that if you show up at the border with a kid, you're automatically admitted. Children have become the golden ticket, and so everybody wants to get themselves a kid, and they don't really care where they get it from. So some are
that's really
sold by Central American parents, and some are kidnapped, and some are just
I feel like Americans
picked up on the way.
Think this stuff isn't really happening. Like I feel like they can't connect to that. Think of that. All these little kids being sold because it helps you get across the border. I mean, that is happening. Anyway, he didn't mention that in his talk, really. I mean, he mentioned trafficking, but he didn't bring up any stats or anything.
Tucker made the point that who does it benefit the most? The people that are benefited the most by this are, rich white people, because they get cheaper gardeners and maids and nannies and stuff like that, right? So I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic that it's called bigoted or racist to support any sort of immigration control when the people benefiting the most from it are those that employ or benefit from migrant workers and cheap wages or illicit wages.
I think that's because the people who throw around those slurs are most often white themselves. Have you noticed that?
Oh, of course.
And it's the white guilt. They're rich and they're ashamed of it. They don't want to stop being rich.
They want a virtue signal. I'm so moral while I live in my gated community and use my iPhone. Do you remember that video, Doug, you and I were just talking about this, that video where the guy goes out on the street and he's asking black people, what do you think about white privilege? And they're like, do you have trouble getting an ID? And what do you think of white privilege? And some of these black people are like, what? Black people don't care. All right, here's another fact. Every week, 300 of our citizens are killed by heroin alone, 90% of which floods across our southern border. So it turns out that it is true that there's about 288 deaths per week involving an overdose of heroin. That's incredible.
That seems low, though, because, again, 300 times 50 is 15,000, and there's 80,000 deaths from drug overdoses. So
apparently only 15,000 are heroin related? Is that?
Maybe some of the rest are the fentanyl, which is big.
But isn't fentanyl a heroin product?
Fentanyl is a painkiller. You've probably had it if you've had surgery.
I thought it was an opioid, just like heroin.
It's a synthetic. It's a synthetic opioid like heroin.
Well, I decided that this is false because everyone knows that overdoses are a result of prescription drugs, which is why we have to take pain medicine away from chronic pain sufferers. Isn't that what we were told?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the old government thing. Something must be done. This is something. Therefore, this must be done. In which case. And we can see the doctors. They're doing the prescriptions. We can go after them because that's a lot easier than like breaking down doors in bad neighborhoods with SWAT teams and going after gang members. Damn, that's dangerous. We don't want to do any of that. Better to go after doctors.
Yeah,
well, it's
crazy.
But is this really, drug use, is that really a function of the trade going across the southern border? There's a demand for drugs, and a certain percentage of the population is going to do drugs, kind of no matter what. I mean, it's going to find a way in because the profits are so high. So if it doesn't come in through the southern border, it'll come in some other way if there's profits to be made.
The drug use in opioids has increased dramatically since DACA was done, the Immigration amnesty by Obama, mainly because since children and teenagers now get you in free, they can bring a lot of their people in, set up their networks. The opium's grown in Afghanistan under the eyes of the U.S. government, who does nothing about it. Then it's moved to Pakistan or China, where it's manufactured into these synthetics. And then the synthetics are moved either by air, ship, or to Mexico and taken, by the cartels over the border into the United States. And there are three governments involved. Let's assume Afghanistan doesn't have a government. There's the U.S. government, the Chinese government, the Mexican government. And none of them, they're all kind of implicated in doing it, because none of them do anything to stop it. They all know what's going on. They all don't want to take the measures that would interfere with it. I think the Chinese government is doing it as a specific foreign policy tool, the Iranian president said the other day, he's going to use drugs against the United States.
Wow.
So it's a weird thing, but yeah, it's almost all of the synthetic opiates come across the.
And these are the ones that are causing the
Southern
overdoses
border.
for some reason. I don't really know why fentanyl, this crazy fentanyl, which, like you said, I've had it a couple times when I've had surgery or whatever, or a procedure. And
well, they adulterated it, right? I mean, they cut it with stuff that isn't
good for you.
Isn't
Right.
good for you. Yeah, I mean, and the dosing consideration is.
So what do you think China's trying to do? Kill Americans or just drug us?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because the Chinese who study history know about their own opium wars.
Yeah, I don't think people know about this. Like, if you've ever read the novel like Noble House or something by the guy who wrote Shogun, I forget the author's name. I get all my history from fiction.
Of course. Who doesn't really?
At least all my Chinese history, because I know nothing about it. But yeah, but the British pushed opium into that country, and the Chinese were not happy about it.
Yeah, and they started fighting back. They pushed it in, and the Chinese were like, "Yeah, we would really rather not have the opium, such cheap opium, pushed into China. Could you please not do that?" And the British were like, free markets. And then the Chinese revolted, and there were a lot of people killed.
Yeah, so they're doing this because they know their own history, and they're just what? I mean, what?
They're not good guys. They're not our friends. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, right. I was told that cheap trinkets were critical to my happiness. But anyway. All right, so yeah, I don't know what else to fact check about that, except that I did also hear that 90% of it is coming in through ports of entry, so a barrier would not actually prevent a lot of this heroin from coming in. And I think, to Doug's point, would it be better to legalize it? Or, to your point, Ed, is it cheap, available stuff just causes a population to, a certain percentage to actually use it where they otherwise wouldn't? I mean, I don't know. Like, I am a freedom lover. I don't, there have been times in the history of this country where drugs were not controlled or regulated, and it wasn't like people were dropping dead. So what's different today? And it is creating a huge crime syndicate, and it's funding these Mexican barbarians.
I mean, I think it's clear that the drug war does more societal damage than the drugs themselves, but that doesn't mean the drugs aren't doing damage, nor are the drugs not a foreign policy tool of an enemy government. I mean, those are both true.
So what if we legalize drugs and, as a foreign policy issue, prevent other countries from flooding our country with their drugs? So like you say, well, drugs are, it's free, but only if it's manufactured in the U.S. Or, you can have it if it's manufactured here. but you can't have it if it's manufactured overseas because it's too easy for another country to target us.
That's kind of what they've done with marijuana, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not allowed to import marijuana, but you can grow it in the United States and sell it. And I don't know what the results of this grand experiment in marijuana legalization have been, but I think it's looking pretty positive. Have you guys heard anything that's...
I wonder if it's pushed the foreigners into the harder drugs, though.
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, they used to sell marijuana, now they're selling heroin. So, I don't know, maybe. And that's what I was just going to ask you is what has changed that all of a sudden this is a problem currently? What's changed? Because Afghanistan's been there for the last 20 years with us around. China hasn't been our friend for, I don't know, ever. Mexico is mostly an opportunistic country. So what's changed? Why is this happening in the last 6 years?
Again, according to Daniel Horowitz, who studies this much more than I do, it's the open borders policy, which basically allows these transnational gangs to become vertically integrated, as we say in the economics biz.
I see.
Vertically integrated.
Yeah, because you know what? So this idea that, okay, so 90% of the stock comes in through ports of entry, but you also have, as you said, these criminal networks, and those people are coming in illegally. So it's not just the drugs themselves, it's the people that cause this drug problem. And those people are definitely coming in not at ports of entry, as well as ports of entry, but...
I mean, many of them are coming in as refugees, asylees, right. 25-year-old minors.
Right, right. Yeah,
how old are you? I'm 17.
There's that one story out of, I think Trump mentioned it in his speech, out of Maryland, where like these quote-unquote kids had infiltrated the high schools there and were selling drugs, and they were MS-13 guys, and they've all been, there was this huge ring, and they were all arrested, and they were all
I live
from
around
that
there. That was big news.
They were all from that program, right? From the resettlement program under Obama. Okay. All right.
But the more important fundamental is that if you secure the border, we can make a decision, and there can be a policy regarding how we regulate or deal with, controlled substances, drugs. And to the extent that you secure the border, you have more control over that international flow, which could be considered a foreign policy problem. And so having a completely open border with nothing there means you don't have any say or control as a country in what's happening. And so I think it's a positive argument for securing the border, that's for sure.
Yeah, one interesting story is the way the cartels use these immigrants as pawns in their strategy. So these caravan people or whatever, they'll come up, they'll pay like $5,000. If you want to pay $5,000, the cartels will get you to the border, and then they'll wait, and then they'll send you over here, and all of the Border Patrol will detect you because it's fairly obvious, and they'll converge on these 100 illegals. And meanwhile, over there, the cartel's slipping through 2 or 3 guys with the big shipment of heroin, you see. So they use them as
distractions, diversions.
As a diversion. It's a very militarily precise. These guys aren't crazy. I mean, they use military precision. Yeah, they use military precision in tactics in doing it. And if you had a barrier, that would be less easy. The more barrier you have, you take away these options, these tactical options from these transnational gangs. So if you want to pay $5,000, they'll get you over the border, and so you can surrender to a border agent. If you want to pay $30,000, $40,000, and maybe you're a Hezbollah member, then they'll get you into Texas and maybe to Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah, I love this argument that the opposition makes that, if they put up a wall, then you just get a 10-foot wall, you get a 12-foot ladder, as if unless the wall is 100% perfect, it has no effect. Even if you even if you stop, 80 to 90% of it coming through, that's still a huge improvement.
Well, why would anyone build a gated community then if all you need is a ladder to get in and rob everybody? I mean, it does work.
Well, if one person gets into the gated community, then we shouldn't have any gated communities, because that proves that the one guy that got over the wall proves that it doesn't work.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
All right. Next fact. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted. This is a Trump quote. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico. And I found 2 conflicting reports on this. One is that 1/3 of women surveyed had been sexually abused during the journey. And the other one is migrant shelter directors said that 80% of women who make the journey are raped in Mexico. So it's between 30 and 80%.
Yeah, I heard the 80% number. I think this is, for once, Trump not engaging in hyperbole and trying to use it,
using
trying
the low
to
number.
use the lower number so that he wouldn't be attacked. But yeah, I've heard 80%. Again, the cartels are not nice people.
Right. Ugh, scary. And imagine if you're a little girl. I just can't even. Ugh, makes me sick. Okay. Next fact. In the last 2 years, ICE officers. This is incredible. In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. Not just killings, violent killings. And that is correct, according to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement numbers compiled in 2017 and 2018. The last 2 years, 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records in this country.
That's incredible.
That's a high number. And these aren't, these are not, he stole a candy bar from a convenience store. This is assaults, sex crimes, and violent killings.
And this is arrests of people within the country that are residing here illegally that also committed these kinds of violent crimes. Is that what they mean? Or are they is that people they intercept on the border?
This is people that they found in the country.
Interior enforcement. Yeah.
Okay.
266,000. These are the people they found and arrested in the last 2 years. And we have 22 million illegal aliens here. That's incredible. I don't even know what to say about that.
And some of them have been arrested before and deported, and then they come back and they get arrested. They commit crimes, and arrested and deported, and come back and arrest and deport, and it's crazy.
I wonder if any of those are repeats or if it's the same. Well, no, it kind of, the way the language is, it says aliens with criminal, or 266,000 arrests. So yeah, it could be the same people multiple times in that number. I don't know. But found within the country. So the argument that criminals aren't getting across the border is that they're all gardeners is totally debunked.
Phenomenal gardeners, though. They're phenomenal gardeners.
Yeah. Bullshit. Okay, that's debunked. 266,000 arrests. That's people we actually located, not ones that got away with criminal records. That's incredible. Now, and not criminal records, but violent criminal records, because there's no fact here, there's no statistic on burglaries, for example. This is just violent crimes. Wow. So, that's my last fact. What do you guys think of the speech overall?
You go ahead, Doug.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty succinct. It wasn't a rambling diatribe. It was, hey, here are the key points. There's criminals coming across. There's international drug trade. There's, the people themselves are being hurt by this. It's a humanitarian crisis. That it's affecting our country. We have a right to secure our border and get off your ass and do something, Congress. This is your job. And I think, it is the job of the Congress. They are not doing anything. There's clearly a problem, so the fact that Trump was even elected means that people are concerned about it, and it is truly a problem. And I think his stats are valid, and it is up to Congress to act. And I think that's probably the thing that frustrates me the most, is that Trump is really the one who's just saying there's a problem. And, the Congress is supposed, constitutionally is charged with actually passing laws and a policy to deal with it.
The couple of times Trump has tried to do anything about immigration, the courts have blocked him. When he's tried to just ban visas from some of the most dangerous and volatile countries, he can't do that. And then when he tries to say, look, you can't claim asylum if you're coming in illegally. You have to come in through the port of entry, or you have to go to the embassy. Well, you can't do that, Trump. That's blocked.
Well, and that's the contradiction here, because Congress passed these laws. I mean, the courts are just enforcing and interpreting current law in the books. So if Trump, if they're going to say, well, Trump, you have to, be bound by these rules and these laws, and he's trying to do, what is he supposed to do? I mean, except by executive order. So, if Congress can't sit there and complain that Trump's the bad guy when he's trying to do something based on their stupid laws that are broken, it's up to them to come, to debate this.
Holding the Congress hostage to force them to do something about this problem. The problem is real. We voted for him. It's a check and balance, and he's holding them hostage, and he should.
Yeah, I mean, I like the speech. I said a solid B. Of course, I grade all presidents on a curve. But I would have said a little bit differently. I would have hammered a little bit. I probably, some of the anecdotes which you put in the end, I might have put them in the beginning. Start with anecdotes, then the statistics, then this is what I want to do. I would have done it a little differently if it were me. But overall, I thought it was good. It was solid. He didn't ramble. I would have a little bit more of Trump's smart-assedness, I think, might have been good.
Yes.
Probably
That's what was missing for me. Or even just his, like, for instance, he could have said, like, I would have loved this if he'd said, hey, I have kids and I have grandkids and I can afford to protect them. And I have Secret Service. But not everybody can, and not everybody does. And I took an oath to protect the citizens. And Democrat lawmakers can protect themselves and their families. They don't care about the people out there that can't protect themselves. That would have really been, I think, a really good thing he could have said to convince people, because he could have made it personal and said, hey, I'm a rich guy. I love it when he brags about that, like, I think that's right. I'm rich. This isn't going to affect me. But I took an oath to protect you guys, and you guys can't hire 24-hour security to protect your families.
Well, yeah, and the elites in Washington and, the Beltway millionaires that profit from the government, and the people on the coasts and the enclaves of the SJWs that promote this open borders nonsense, they're the ones least affected by it and that benefit the most. They benefit by having access to cheap labor and, and virtue signaling, and they don't suffer the consequences of overburdened public resources, public schools, healthcare issues that take place, and because they have the money to bypass all that stuff and not deal with it and live in gated communities. So he did make a couple references to that, but yeah, he definitely could have driven that point home even further. But I think most people get that. I think that's why most people support him.
I don't know if most people get that. I feel like I'm in a bubble sometimes with all that. But
you should see my Twitter feed. More than half of them are lefties, and racist, sexist, homophobic.
Yeah, right.
They're all over Trump.
Yeah.
So what about those Bond villains who came on afterwards? And
well, hang on, I've got some more things I wanted to say about what I thought Trump could have said. He also didn't mention the cost to house all of the migrants versus the $5 billion wall. I mean, like, he didn't mention like how cheap this thing is, like what he's asking for in the scheme of things, or he could have compared it to the billions given to Iran or the billions we spend to protect other countries' borders. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would have been a really effective argument he didn't make. And then he also didn't say anything about, like, law, like rule of law versus anarchy. And what makes America safe and good is a lot of it is that we actually enforce our laws equally. And that we don't discriminate. And that we, you can't break the fucking law. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't say that. And I don't know if that resonates with people. It resonates with me because I'm kind of a nerd about that. But I don't know if most people would care or really understand how important the rule of law is to our civilization here.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. That's not his strong suit. I mean, I think making a more abstract argument is definitely not his strong suit. He's going to focus on the real concretes. But it's a good point. I think he did say that the wall, in effect, he said, would pay for itself in terms of savings from, the other problems that we have. But he didn't specifically point to, the foreign policy aid that we give to, Israel or Jordan or Tunisia, or one of these countries, to build their border fences.
Right.
And he did reference Schumer's support for a barricade or for a wall in the past.
Yep.
And all these guys did.
Hillary,
Pelosi
Obama.
didn't. Pelosi didn't. But Schumer did.
Well, she was very in favor of laws restricting illegal immigration. They've got her on tape, particularly in the 90s. This was a real Democratic talking point at one time, was cracking down on illegal immigration. Everyone from Clinton to Obama to Hillary, they all were in
this
that
was a
camp.
big labor issue.
Yeah, because it appealed to the unions.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's funny how things have changed. They don't care about the unions anymore. They care only about identity politics. And they know they're getting a ton of voters.
They care about their own reelection. And so they just respond to whoever they think they're basing.
Right. All right. So that's where we're at. So anyway, their response, Democrat response. Yeah, I hope, if you haven't seen this, you got to go watch it because it's creepy. It's just so creepy.
Well, I called them Bond villains, and that's not really fair. They're like 1970s Doctor Who villains. I don't know what you've ever watched. Like the extremely plastic, costumes.
They
and
were all
plastic
squished together in the center of the frame. They're all like squished together at the podium, and their bodies didn't move, and just their faces moved, and they both had these weird expressions. Well, they're both that way anyway. When Trump caught them in the Oval Office and made them debate border security in the Oval Office, to me, Schumer really showed himself to be like that sort of asshole kid, the know-it-all. Well, you didn't do this, and blah, blah, blah. He was just like he kept repeating the same point and laughing like it was all about a gotcha rather than doing his job to like represent Americans,
I think the Democrats should have gotten the two old men on the Muppets from the balcony and had them deliver the rebuttal.
Except they're likable.
Right, they're likable.
I don't think these. I said this the other day to some friends. Can you imagine actually having a conversation with Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi? A normal conversation. I don't think there's any there. I don't think there's anybody behind the mask. They put on this mask for the political plastic stuff, but I don't think there's anything there at all. There's nothing there. It's like a computer program has written that they do not pass the Turing test. These two people, they aren't real people. And I think McConnell and John Cornyn and there's some of the, Paul Ryan, I don't think they're real people either. I think that's one of the reasons Ocasio-Cortez is so popular. Yeah. It's like, she's Trump. Nuts. And Trump.
Right.
She's nuts, but at least she's a human being. At least she passes the Turing test.
So, even Bernie, for that matter. One of the reasons Bernie was more popular than Hillary was for that reason.
Yeah, they're just like automatons, just spewing cliches and talking points that have been
this
programmed
is why Ted
into
Cruz
them by their
didn't win too, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
As good a politician he is, I actually really like him. And again, these two are the Pelosi, Schumer are walking billboards for term limits, which Ted Cruz just introduced into the Senate, a bill for term limits on the Senate and the House. I don't think it's going to pass, but it'd be great, you know? These two old fogies are walking billboards for that bill. But Ted Cruz himself is fake like that, you know, too rehearsed and too cliched and too, you know. I feel like, though, if you did sit down with Ted Cruz, you could actually have a conversation with him. I feel like.
Well, remember that video where he was talking to somebody in the street and he sounded just like a normal person, and they were kind of debating back and forth, and like, damn, Ted, where the hell was that?
Yeah,
you know,
like, was that his twin? Because that wasn't Ted Cruz, right?
Yeah. Plastic Preacher Ted has got to, you know, exit stage left and bring in authentic Ted. Right. And I think he would do much better.
Yeah, I do too. Because his message is good. And that's what he has to stop thinking that he has to be a salesman about it and just speak the truth, you know?
Yeah, actors who know they're acting instead of just being natural aren't good. So just act natural. Just
yeah, they need the method. What do they call that? The acting, what's that called? The Marlon Brando?
Method acting?
Method acting, yeah. They got to pretend to be real people really hard. You know, they got to work on just being human beings and, like, live as human beings, you know, like, be in character all the time as real human beings. It's hard to do that, you know.
That's the old joke in Hollywood, you know, when you can fake sincerity, you know you've made it.
Well, don't we like the fact, though, that this is the face of the Democratic Party? These Doctor Who villains like Schumer and Pelosi. I think it's fantastic.
It is fantastic, except it's changing now and moving into the Ocasio-Cortez, and who's that? Rashid, who was just like, we're gonna impeach the motherfucker. What's her name?
Tlaib, Tlaib. I don't know how you pronounce it.
I don't know how to say her name either. the third Muslim in Congress.
Well, didn't we lose Keith Ellison to?
Yeah, we lost Keith Ellison to Attorney General of Minnesota.
Attorney General.
So one anti-Semite gone, another anti-Semite brought in. That's great.
Yeah, well, it cancels out.
Anti-American, yeah. Democrats they got to keep the balance. How do you think Bernie Sanders reacts to this? I mean, is he a self-hating Jew or what?
What do you mean?
Well, you know, Bernie Sanders is a Jewish guy, and
to the new Muslim,
and Charles Schumer and these guys. I mean, Charles Schumer is a real pro-Israel guy. How does he look at this Muslim woman who's very anti-Semitic, very anti-Israeli? Like, what isn't that a conflict within the Democratic Party?
He doesn't comment because the Democrats never. They're just lockstep. If anybody steps out of line of the party, they're crushed. So,
and I think Sanders is much less interested in Yahweh than he is in Lenin. So I don't think I don't think he cares too much. Unreconstructed communist that he is.
Yeah, that's true. He's more of a Bolshevik than a.
Yeah. And the occasional Cortex is kind of a classic Marxist too. I mean, she sounds like she's an idiot, but I guarantee you she's merely repeating what she heard in school in her economics and interrelation classes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's like the dumb college student that they do those man on the street interviews with college students, right? At NYU or someplace, and they ask them, real basic questions about who's the vice president and stuff, and they just have like talking points. I don't know. I like the ones that opposed voter ID because they thought the Berkeley students that thought black people were too dumb to get driver's licenses and didn't know how. She's that kind of person.
Yeah. So the Democrats' main response to Trump's speech is that he shouldn't shut down the government for this, that he should sign the bipartisan budget bill and get the government up and running, because the poor government workers who aren't getting a paycheck are suffering, and there's some trash in a couple of the national parks that the libertarians haven't cleaned up yet. And that's the reason. And then we can work on the border later. That's what they said.
You saw that in Yosemite, all the businesses and people chipping in to clean everything up and haul trash out.
Yeah.
All without some government master telling them how. It's weird how that works.
The other headline I love is that apparently a bunch of TSA people are quitting because they have to work without pay.
This is great.
Yeah, let them all quit. Can we please disband the whole agency?
Who interprets any of this as negative? I mean, I saw this article today that I posted where the title of the article was "Republicans Are Cracking," and they quote Murkowski and Thune, who say that people are, farmers' payments are being disrupted, and people who are seeking government-backed mortgage loans. And Murkowski says the IRS needs to be back in business. Like what? So the people that want payments and the people that are confiscating the loot, we really want to make sure that they're in operation. None of this is negative. This is all great.
Yeah, fantastic. All the non-essential personnel, they're non-essential.
Maybe in a year we'll all say, hey, is the government still shut down? I haven't really noticed.
Right. But I don't know. I think some Democrats probably care that some people are going without a paycheck. Maybe Trump should have mentioned that the reason he's doing this now is this is it. This is the last chance to actually have this legislation, because they promised him that they would do it a year ago when he signed the omnibus bill, which is the same situation. They promised him they would do it, and they didn't do it. So he's got egg on his face because of that. And this is a main campaign promise. He has to do it. And he could have mentioned that. I think he should have mentioned that. Don't you?
Yeah, well, remember the Obama elections have consequences quote, remember?
Right.
I mean, he could say the same thing, remember?
Or the I'm in the driver's seat, the Democrats are in the back seat, and they shouldn't be backseat drivers. Remember when Obama said that?
Yeah.
The problem is, I think that the political calculus is such that there is a veto-proof bipartisan majority in favor of complete open borders. And I think that there's maybe 60 or 70 representatives who think there should be a wall and reasonable border security, and I think maybe 10 or 12 senators, and I think the rest don't care. And I think they don't care for a variety of reasons. Some of them are libertarian open borders types. Some of them are leftist identitarian open borders types. Some of them are they just get paid by the open borders lobbies, Chamber of Commerce on the one side and the La Raza on the other, and they just don't care. And I think that Trump is going to lose this because I don't think there is. I think his support among Republicans in Congress is very, very soft. I really do. I think they're gonna stick this out for another couple of weeks, see if they can get the Democrats to blink. The Democrats tend not to blink,
right.
And then they'll pass a bill to reopen that part of the government, and Trump will veto it, and then they'll override his veto, and that will be the end of that. I mean, the Republicans know that if they do that, it'll be a massacre in 2020, but I think they kind of want it. I don't think they want Trump as president in 2020. I really do believe that. I think they want. I mean, of course, the Republicans would rather have one of them than a Democrat, but I think they'd rather have President Harris or somebody than Trump again. I think they.
Doug, wasn't it you last week that was making the point that you think the Democrats like being the losers?
No, I think. Oh, you mean Republicans?
Republicans, yeah, they like being the loser. It actually is it's their identity. It
is. They're much better when they're carping from the sideline about how evil and twisted, the Democrats are, and how because that allows them to be ideologically principled while not having to bear the responsibility for actually taking action.
Yeah.
So they can sound great to their base. And they raise a lot of money. I mean, when Obama got in, and he was threatening gun rights, and the Tea Party thing happened. I mean, think of the money that was pouring in to the Republican Party and the Tea Party Republicans who were really up in arms and very concerned with, the bailouts and
then
gun
they
control
crushed
and
the Tea Party,
healthcare.
though. They crushed the Tea Party.
Right, because
they don't want to get too successful.
No, because, and I mean, they've been there for 2 years, right? What have they done? Nothing, because they don't want to be the ones who pass a health care bill. They don't want to be the ones who pass an immigration bill. They don't want to be the ones who cut, entitlements, because then they'll, quote unquote, be blamed for it. They rather just have the Democrats do it, and then they get the money and the funding and the campaign donations to stop it. And I knew a congressman. I remember him telling me, if we just had this was right after the Tea Party thing, and he got elected, and, if we just had the presidency, because now we just have, Congress, and we can't do anything with this Obama guy. We're just, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. And then, Trump gets elected, and what do? Nothing.
Nothing. Where's my Obamacare repeal that they passed 1 million times before they had the presidency? And what kills me, though, is that the constituents vote in, McCain every time, and then he dies, and then what do we get? We get Romney, whose first act is to write an op-ed saying,
"Well, that's Tom
I'm
Woods'
against
law."
The president. What? That's
Tom Woods' law. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I heard him say that. I don't get it. So
why?
Funny.
What is his? How does he say? Why? What's his? I don't understand.
John McCain is a leftist in domestic policy, and he wants to invade every country in the world on foreign policy, and so his point is that they may promise to cut domestic spending or domestic programs, but they never do, and they promise to keep America out of these stupid foreign wars, but they never do. So no matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because I guess. I mean,
because
why?
That's where the money, follow the money, look at Obama, or Trump, or any of these people that went in saying we're going to shut down these silly foreign wars, right? And what happens? There's a massive establishment that's making $1 trillion, literally making $1 trillion a year in defense spending, and they don't want it to stop. And they control Congress. They control the funding and the money.
We, the people, are definitely not in charge. And I don't want to get too depressing today, but wow. I mean, that just...
Well, think about it. Trump is the commander-in-chief, and he tries to pull out of Syria. And what happened? What happened over the last month? No, can't do it. The literal commander-in-chief, this quote-unquote outsider, this maniac who just does whatever he wants, tries to pull a few thousand troops out of Syria, and he can't.
A country
because
that
we have to protect the
never
Kurds from
declared war on. There's no congressional, it should be within his purview. And all these military men quit over it. Like, it's just, anyway, yeah, it's all bizarre. Let's move on to Alexandria Ocasio-Castro. I want to play
my girlfriend.
Your girlfriend, yeah. I'm going to play a little clip for you. She is the future of the Democrat Party, I think, right now. Obviously, she's a Democratic socialist, overtly so. She's called for a Green New Deal that is so absurd. Anyway, she was on 60 Minutes talking to, what's his guy's name again? Vanderbilt. What's
John
his
McCain.
name? No, the interviewer.
I was kidding. Everybody's John McCain.
Yeah, no, they're...
Why can't I think of this guy's name? Well, whatever.
Stop watching 60 Minutes 60 years ago.
It's the guy from CNN. Anyway.
Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper, thank you. Yes. Vanderbilt's son. Okay. So here is the clip that I want to talk about.
The criticisms of you is that your math is fuzzy. The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios
oh my goodness.
for misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
All right, that's what I want to talk about. Interesting quote.
I totally agree with her, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, she's right.
Elaborate on that.
Well, I think morality is more important, especially in everybody else's lives. We all make stupid mistakes. I make hundreds of stupid mistakes per day. And but, what's important is your principles and your values and your morality and what you think you should do for your own life and the life of your family. And I think she agrees. It's just her morality is evil.
Totally evil. Yeah.
Well, also, morality determines the direction that you're going.
Yeah.
It determines the trajectory and the trend and the path of your life. Whether or not, we spend 900 trillion on this or 800 trillion, she's right. It's sort of an irrelevancy. The fact is that we're spending a lot of money on an entitlement. And that's what really matters to her. And I think Republicans should understand that. And I think it's the same phenomena you see with libertarians who are somewhat amoral when it comes to their method of arguing politics, where they make free market arguments, which are sound and logical, and they can even quote the stats, but they miss the moral underpinnings of life and why the free market reflects those values. And the thing that resonates with people is the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of being free to express yourself and live a good life. And that's what kind of appeals to people about America. We could argue about, why we should privatize the post office. That's always the classic example, right? That libertarians want to privatize the post office. Who cares? I think it's more important to put out the moral ideal of freedom and why that's important in people's lives and why it makes our country better and makes our lives better. And, unfortunately, like Ed said, she's right about that abstractly, but her moral guide is what? Self-sacrifice. She wants everyone to tax the rich.
She wants egalitarianism. She wants everybody. She doesn't care how much it costs, because the real goal is to bring the rich down. It's not even if it doesn't work, like even if we don't get enough to create 100% green energy, the point is we will have crushed the wealthy and there won't be any disparity anymore.
Right.
If you look at the new Green New Deal that she's proposing, it's it would take an entire show to sort of get into the details of the whole global warming argument. But even if you accept the climate alarmists that there's something bad going to happen, most of her stuff is dealing with, trying to deal with privilege and racial discrimination.
In this Green New Deal, I think that's really an important point. The Green New Deal isn't even about environmental. I mean, it's somewhat about environmentalism, but the other things in there are about medical care and things that don't have anything to do with environmentalism.
Yeah, Tom Woods pointed out once that, if it really were a catastrophe, like the world is going to end, we got to do something. Don't you think we could put like racial equality on the back burner for right now while we deal with this planet endangering catastrophe? And then, once we solve that, we can definitely get back to the whole racial equality thing. But, and of course it's all nonsense.
Right.
It's all bogus.
Actually, the racial equality thing is the more important thing. Yeah. And the environmentalism is, and she even said this. This is a quote from her too, that we will use environmentalism as a vehicle to finally achieve racial equality, racial and economic equality. So she admits that they're using environmentalism as an excuse to ram through something to crush white people and wealthy people. It's like, what? So she's really honest. And, people are talking about, don't make fun of her and don't advertise for her. And the more press she gets, the more popular she's going to get. But I'm telling you, this woman is the future. It doesn't matter what we do. She is it. She is the it girl of the Democrat Party. She's got a huge future. She's the high sparrow of that cult and she's coming in with a pure version of the philosophy and she's more honest and she's going to win because of it. She's the most consistent. So it doesn't matter what we do. So I say mock away, first of all, because she's very mockable and it's fun to make fun of her and it's good for our morale to do so. And I don't think anybody should ever feel, I said this on Facebook, I was ranting one day, don't let people make you feel guilty for protecting your morale. You know, like that's a real thing. To make fun of things and to make jokes for your own benefit. Who cares what's happening outside of that? Like you do need to make fun of these idiots and these assholes and these mini tyrants. I mean, she's wearing a $3,000 suit and she's about power. She's a Sandinista. She's honest about it. I don't know.
Well, she's the living representation of the old leftist canard that it's, socialism's good in theory, but not good in practice, right? And that you just need someone else, the next guy is going to make it work. And it's the fact that it's good, the quote unquote good in theory is the problem here.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she's expressing is that, hey, we're good. We're morally good. We're good in theory. Yeah, the practical details, we need some work on that. But, the direction we're going is right. And as long as they have that moral high ground, they're going to keep winning. And she's going to keep winning. And that's what's scary. And
Very
I think
well
that's
stated.
that's what needs to be challenged is the idea that her ideas are good in theory. They're not good in theory. They're evil in theory.
It's
and
theft.
They're horrifying in practice.
It's pure theft and control. That is socialism. It's not, so great for everybody. And there's a pile of bodies that prove that from the last 100 years.
Yeah, Newton said he stood on the shoulder of giants, and Ocasio-Cortez says she's standing on a pile of bodies.
Yeah,
and that's
but I think as our talking point, people say that, but we need to make the connection that it's not just happenstance that socialism leads to piles of bodies. Why is it? It's because at roots, socialism is controlled by the government and it's stopping people from making voluntary choices. I mean, why do we need socialism? Why do you need the government? Because otherwise people aren't going to do what they want voluntarily.
Oh, come on. I mean,
it's a system of taxation and theft and force.
Look at Venezuela, right? We all know Venezuela is a catastrophe. People are eating their pets. They're eating zoo animals. They're flooding away from the country. And all because this Chavez and Maduro implemented this socialist system. And they said it was socialism, and the people in Hollywood loved it. And even Paul Krugman was like, yeah, okay, maybe he's doing some good things. These are crazy people. And now, have you heard anything on the news about Venezuela lately?
Well, see, it would have worked if people just weren't so corrupt. And that's what they say. And I love Jordan Peterson's answer to this when he says, you know what that means? That means you're saying, if I were in charge, I am so good that I could implement socialism without all of this horror. And it's just not true.
So if Venezuela today isn't convincing people that probably socialism's not a good idea.
It's not, because
I don't know what it is.
I know they're voting in more socialists all the time. We're getting more and more socialist with Venezuela right in our backyard looking like that. That is insanity.
I bet 90% of the electorate doesn't know that where Venezuela is on a map, has never heard of Venezuela, and doesn't know that Venezuela is a socialist hellhole right now. So that's the problem. And
the media,
I don't know how to.
The media and the universities, I guess that's the problem.
You got to. Where do you find out about Venezuela? In the alternative media,
right.
The same media that's being deplatformed, right and left, for telling mostly right, for telling the truth.
And this is why I have left Patreon and I'm taking a stand, because I do think that the deplatforming of people on the right is the serious issue that we're facing right now, and all this other stuff is kind of noise. I think that's the number one issue, because that does get down to speech, and we are going to lose if we can't be heard.
But I want to make a point, which is that we can laugh at Cortez and kind of see her as a fool. But Sonny, to your point, I think she needs to be regarded as evil.
Yeah.
Not just a clown, which, she's caricatured as a clown because her ideas are so, 70% tax on the rich, and, her, the factual and economic basis of her ideas is crazy. And most people seize on that because it's easy, but it's harder to regard someone like her as her ideas as evil and morally evil, because she's this nice, pretty girl, and she's dancing on the roof, and she wants to help the poor and stuff like that. And I think until people regard her and her ideas as, anti-freedom and anti-human life, whether it's her or some other new person's going to, it's Bernie Sanders or it's Cortez or someone's going to show up and, who's charismatic. It was, they tried with Obama, didn't quite work. Now it's Cortez. If she goes away because she's kind of laughed out of the gym, then, it'll be some other pretty face, Beto O'Rourke or whoever it is.
Yeah,
and they're going to keep attracting attention because people associate them with moral idealism. And, we're never going to win by just making fun of them. You have to. Well,
although here's the best joke I saw all week was a clip of her dancing on the roof, right? And the caption was, "When you realize you're at the front of the breadline." Like, to me,
yeah, that's genius.
To me, that was like the best meme because it was the best way to make fun of her, because it made fun of the dancing, but it also highlighted the immorality of what she's selling.
Yes.
And how she's going to be at the front of the breadline, just like, Chavez. She'll be at the front making all this money because she's now one of your leaders. And the rest of you are going to be in the breadline. It's going to lead to breadlines. So I thought that was genius. Just a brilliant, brilliant joke. That's what we need.
I think there are people in the United States who actually look at Pelosi and Schumer and say, "Oh, those are the good guys." But I think there are very few. I think there's very few people who actually look at them. They might say, "Well, there are bad guys," but they look at Kurt Schlichter calls her Ocasio-Castro.
Perfect.
Ocasio-Castro, and they say, "Oh, well, she's definitely a good guy, woman of color, and
right,
cute, nice and young,
charming,
millennial, uses social media."
I love Kurt Schlichter. He's my favorite. Yeah, he's great, and he knows how to make fun of those people too, and he doesn't let them take the moral high ground.
Yeah, he's ruthless.
Yeah, we need more of that, right?
Yes, right. Absolutely.
All right, well, that's the end of the show, guys. Can you believe it? It's been more than an hour.
Wow.
Hey, everybody, if you want to call in a joke for next week, it's 707-681-5834. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Ed and Doug, for joining me today and talking about all this.
Thank you, Sonny. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded, and because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.